Boom. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be talking today about why I think the war between Israel and Palestine has been in the planning for a long time and how conspiracies might be able to extend into the 100-plus year mark. I'm going to start by taking a look at something here. So on the top of the page, you see Mr. Albert Pike's face. This is apparently a letter that was written from Albert Pike to Giuseppe Manzini, dated August 15th, 1871. Now, there is some record of this note taking place and being held in the British Museum for a long time and then apparently disappearing. But I read this 20 years ago when I first came onto the internet. I was looking for interesting out-of-the-box thinkers and ideas that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Albert Pike envisioned 3 world wars in this letter, and Pike's plans of these ideas to come to fruition, which have been shockingly on target. Now, when I read them, the First and Second World War had already taken place, so we're going to skip through those, and we're going to focus on the Third World War. Because, again, remember, I read this 20 years ago, so even if it's not from 1871, it's from at least 20 years ago from when I read it. So take from that what you will, but I believe this helps give some context to where we're going and who might be trying to push us there to begin with. So, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to the fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists. We shall provoke a formidable societal cataclysm in which, in all its horror, will show clearly the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose despotic spirits will form that moment without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. I believe right now we are being shown an image very similar to the blue or the red, or the white and the black. It is a choice between duality, and they want you to pick sides. To me, one of the things that I keep coming back to is the understanding that if there is a bigger puppet or chess master at play right now who is trying to encourage this movement towards one world government, you cannot have all these separate factions of religion. And even myself, I got caught up in this. I'm saying, oh yeah, religion is what brought us to this, these blind faith ideals and people killing over this. And then I realized, and that is when I remembered this quote from so long ago, that I was actually participating in that atheism, effectively. Now, I believe in the divine. I believe that the universe is a divine place, and that we are possibly in a much larger war than just these two particular states or nations. Now, I want to take a moment here as well to say that I condone, just like any human being should, the murder of innocent people, women, children, or anybody. And if you've been on X in the last 48 hours, you will have seen images that you've probably never seen before. So for better or for worse, desensitizing oneself to that turmoil at that scale so that when it comes to your home, you're more accustomed to it, because I believe that's what's coming next. So I want to also lead into why I think that this is being fomented and how you might be able to have a conspiracy that lasts over 100 years without any particular person involved. So let's stay a bit more temporal here. This is apparently a video that Hamas released as they prepared and trained to infiltrate Israel. There are rumors, at least, of some of the IDF being warned about this ahead of time. For those of you that don't know, IDF stands for the Israeli Defense Forces. You look at it a little bit deeper. I've got friends from Israel as well who've been telling me it's almost impossible that this could have happened. So this is an ex-IDF soldier that explains. She says there's the highest level of tech, and Mossad is one of the world's best intelligence agencies. She says if a bird flew close, we knew. If a cockroach even moved near our fence, we knew. So tell me, how did 400 Hamas pass through today? In the previous context of our conversation, the idea that there is a third chess player between these two dominant forces trying to basically shake the cage so that the rats start fighting. I don't mean to call anybody rats, but just as an allegory here. If you put both black and red ants in a jar, they won't fight. But if you shake that jar, the ants on both sides will exterminate one another. And I believe right now what we're witnessing is just that. You have these two separate factions who are being shaken up by a third party. And that third party wants to stay anonymous. But since COVID, one of the things I've realized is that we are dealing with a level of criminality that is something similar to a mind virus. So I want to share with you an idea that I've thought about many times before, which is yoga or meditation. Yoga and meditation have extended past any one individual's life because, kind of like a mind virus, it lives on the consciousness of each individual. There's some quote in the Bible, I believe, that says, if you cut one head off the snake, another will grow back. It is in this context, I believe, that a conspiracy or an ideal for something to take place can extend past generations, regardless of any particular person who is involved in that conspiracy. One of the most troubling things is to come to the conclusion that, well, maybe there's a cult or a religion of people who think that the world is overpopulated and they want to move the world into a one world government. They want to chip and tag you and put you under a social credit system and bring you into this doctrine of the one world government. Again, remembering that a one world government can't exist with all these separate factions fighting, so the best way to do would be to shake the glass that they are in and encourage them to mutually destroy one another. And through that destruction, then offered the solution. This is a form of what is known as manufactured consent, the ability to generate the stir necessary to get you to pick a side. So there have been, I think one of the most difficult parts, again, is to not pick a side, but to understand that there are innocents and civilians on every side of a war, and that there's no reason to think that anything in war is but other than a crime itself, right? They're like, oh, it's a war crime to turn off water. Every type of war is a crime. There is no distinction. It's not, oh, they're using phosphorus bombs. It's a war crime. All war committed should be deemed a crime and atrocity unto itself. They are one and the same. It's not like, oh, there's like the good war, right? Which is what they're trying to convince you. They're trying to convince you that there is a good war, and that is not true. Now, although, again, our people are going to react, they're going to start to defend themselves, but they're going to defend themselves, the black ant versus the red ant, against two waging parties who are being shaken up by a third that do not recognize that. And what I wanted to share now is that's an extremely important part to me. It was heartbreaking to see images of a music festival of people that I would likely hang out with at somewhere other than in the world, dancing with them, to then be seeing them carried off, drawn, mutilated, bones broken. These are the world's worst atrocities. All forms of war are a crime, in my opinion. Now, as we move into this, the United States is clearly an ally to Israel, and so is Canada, Australia, and many other of the Five Eye countries. They have partnered with them to begin with, and this brings us back to Mr. Albert Pike. Now, again, whether this was written in 1871, it was at least written 20 years plus ago, which gives me the reason to believe that it has some line of credibility, because you could ask the question, how would they know about the state of Israel before it was created? Well, let's imagine again that this religious cult is able to live like a mind virus on the group of people trying to foster this one world government for many, many, many years. And then regardless of whoever is in charge, that mind virus can extend generations. So Albert Pike said about the First World War must be brought in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the Tsars in Russia, making that country a force of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agent tours here, or the agents of Illuminati, between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. And at the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy other governments and in order to weaken other religions. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the difference between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism is strong enough to institute a sovereign state in Israel and Palestine. Now, again, this has already happened by the time I had read it, but let's just for a minute pretend that the world is flat. I don't believe that it is, but let's just open the mind a little bit to allow ourselves to ask questions that seem totally unorthodox and completely out of the norm. This Second World War and international communism must be strong enough in order to balance the Christendom, which would be otherwise restrained and held back in check until the time when we would need it for the final societal cataclysm. Which brings us to where we are today. These news and images of bombs and guns and Palestinians wanting to fight Israel and Israel wanting to fight Palestine. This is designed to choose and force you to pick a side, and it is very hard not to do so. It is extraordinarily hard, especially for the people who are on either side of that. Whether you're a red ant or a black ant in the cage, in the glass jar, it's very difficult for you not to war because you are unable to perceive at that moment the outside force who shook the glass. Now, again, I do not mean in any way to demean humans and to demean the potential. I live in the jungle with thousands of liters of fresh water and a waterfall, and I can see the stars. I've got hundreds of fruit trees. I wish everybody could live this deeply in connection with nature, because it would probably solve many of the ideas that are going on in today. Now, I had a little bit of a technical moment because if you don't know, the Iron Dome, which is kind of what you're witnessing here, as Hamas is apparently shooting rockets into Israel. Israel has this amazing kind of defense system which can just shoot rockets out of the sky. So first off, kudos to humans because we build amazing technology. The problem is we use it to fight one another instead of learn how to live peacefully and survive on this planet in an open, diverse society where you should be allowed to believe in spaghetti monster gods or whatever it is that you would like and still come together on these terms. I've learned over the last 24 hours that as our perception grows, our awareness grows, the universe itself grows. And I do not just see two sides in this fight anymore. I see a third party trying to manipulate us to the end goal of a one world government. So moving off from the Iron Dome here, I had a few more pieces that I wanted to also highlight. In the quote by Albert Pike, the idea is to force each of these major economies and religions into either total extermination and financial exhaustion. The amount of money that has been sent to Ukraine in bombs and guns, what do you think is going to happen? If you generate and create bombs and guns, those guns will be fired and those bombs will be used. If you generate technology, people will use them eventually. Oil left in the strategic reserves in the United States. We are basically aiming to cultivate a war right now which will put the most intense, extreme poverty into every single country and nation on this planet because everybody still currently relies on oil. We don't have infinite energy technology where the aliens can drop down and give us why would you even want to give humans an infinite energy device where you could fly through interstellar space and visit other planets? Because right now, everybody appears to be hell-bent on destroying one another when the glass is shaken around them. I believe this is all designed to foment this third world war. I did not believe we were going to enter at a third world war with Russia and Ukraine. I constantly said I did not think we would get there. But again, remembering this quote, after years of not seeing it, I believe that is where we are. So last two kind of things here. I've learned over the last 24 hours that the best choice is to find some level of sarcasm and to find some level of comedy. And it is heartbreaking to do so because we know that this is a tragic comedy. When we open our awareness to the infinite of the universe, I'm going to sound like a fucking hippie here, but the vastness of billions of years of time and the trivial nature of each individual human as it stands upon that vastness, sarcasm and comedy become one of the only outlets to truly express an opinion because I do not know anything. I barely know anything about how Israel got there or how Palestine got there or the thousands of years of history that each of these cultures has had leading up to this experience. I do not claim to be an expert in any way, shape, or form, but what I wanted to do here is just point and laugh at the ridiculousness of this all. Here you have the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, who emphasized that his country will provide humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Now, if you don't know who Nicolas Maduro is or Venezuela right now has thousands of people every day leaving that country due to economic hardship and the inability for that government to provide aid to itself and function properly. This is a dictator effectively being like, oh, you guys are capable of atrocities. Bro, pot, meet kettle. Hey, kettle, meet fucking pot. This is absurd. And only when I started to do that did things make more sense. As I started to try to make fun of it and to find some comic relief in this infinite tragedy that is taking place, I found Palestinians and people from Israel starting to follow me on Twitter. And I was worried for a minute. I was like, maybe I'm going to offend people by telling them they're both pawns. Like, Israel's a pawn, Palestine is a pawn in this much bigger chess game to implement a one world government. Don't fall for this nonsense. And I've been amazed that this is actually the best opinion that I could come up with, is because it doesn't take sides. It allows room for the human failure to laugh at itself, even within this tragedy, in the death of women and children and innocent civilians and people that clearly should not be bombing one another. All war is a crime, in my opinion. And looking at people like Nicolas Maduro try to give us moral advice is one of the most ridiculous fucking opposite world things that I'd ever seen. Also, Erdogan from Turkey. These are not shining bright stars of morality within our ecosystem. And people are like, yeah, look at this. This is what we should be listening to. And I want to bring it back finally to this. This is quarterly excess mortality within the countries. I'm going to look top of the line here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Singapore in 2020, throughout their pandemic, throughout the 2021, they had a very low excess mortality rate over the 5-year rolling average. Now, this is a 5-year rolling average. This means also included is the year of the pandemic when most people were supposed to have been dying in early 2020 and early 2021. And currently they are registering a 37% increase in excess mortality. I don't claim to know where that excess mortality is coming from. I'm sure some of you can make your own educated guesses. I won't do so on YouTube because I will be kicked off. On X, I'm sure we can make more astute guesses because the data is blatantly clear. But look at this. In Qatar, 60% excess death, 31%, 60%, 40%, 50%, 30%. There is a cult right now, a mind virus who believes that the world is overpopulated. They are a technocratic elite who believes that a one-world government is the only way to curate the response necessary for global events. I believe we are being pushed by an invisible third party into these wars, and I believe that taking a side is the wrong choice. And I know for the people that are on either side of that war, it is impossible effectively to step outside and see that. And I know even what I'm saying probably sounds brash, egotistical, and retarded as far as I'm concerned. And that's okay. I accept that I'm stupid, but this data right now of mass excess mortality, increasing excess mortality into a supposed medical treatment that was positively helping, is the fingerprint of that outside force driving us in the direction that it wants. Anyways, try to find some comedic relief. Try to find some comedy and some sarcasm. I don't know what's going on, but the only thing I've found, in my opinion, that might be valuable is to remember that in this galaxy of some billion years, we're just a speck in time, and we shouldn't be taking ourselves so goddamn seriously. Anyways, I'll keep you updated. There's some market stuff I want to go over in my other videos, but I wanted to share this thought because in the early COVID days, I didn't share much of my thoughts because what do I know? I'm not a doctor. I can't have opinions on these more advanced ideas. But if I had learned then what I've learned now, which is to be kind of comedic, sarcastic, and to share what I think is what is actually going on, at the very least, I'll have felt like I participated in the movement, even if no matter what happens, this wave will crash and fall upon all of us. Because I don't know where this story ends. I hope that we could find peace and love and harmony within our human existence and remember our place in this interstellar travel that we're all probably supposed to be more unified in. Anyways, I don't know. Hopefully that's valuable. Hopefully there's some insight and something that each of you can take upon your day. I feel sorry for all sides of this war. I believe all war is a crime. Anyways, Teal with the Arcane Bear. Leave me your thoughts and comments. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.